Good evening, everybody. Spirit of 420 here, because everything I do is so 420. Beautiful Thursday night. Running an hour late. I had to end up postponing it. Just had family shit to take care of. And quite frankly, part of that was getting some freaking Cane's chicken, and I had to wait in a disgustingly long line. And let's just say that pushed everything back. But that chicken is worth it. Anyway, here we are, Thursday. By the way, I'm pretty sure, and I'll probably post it later, but I'm pretty sure that tomorrow, around that normal 7:20 time, that's Mountain Time, that is PM, I'll be doing a comical book reading. So it's quite funny. It's a parody. The book, I've already talked about it a couple of times, so it's not new, but I'll be doing reading of this, and I'm probably just going to start with like a fourth of it, maybe as much as a half. We'll just see how far we get into it. It's actually quite, how you say, it's nice, because even though he did a parody, it's quite robust. There is a lot. Let's just say quite a lot. And even unlike the book that it parodies, this one has full pages on each side. And I have a nice digital copy for the reading. So I think y'all will be impressed, right? So I thought tonight would be funny to talk about circa 1981. I remember that now. Technically, I think, and I put on there because they happened in the same night. So I was 9. I wasn't even 10. But I was, and I thought it was 82, but I'm pretty sure this was like 81. So I was a fresh 9, if you will. And my dad was a playboy. And what I mean by that is, once my mother was no longer in the picture, and you can imagine my mom, 1976, my mother left my father for another woman. So, I think he was bound and determined to be a bit of a gigolo. So as far as I can remember, as far back as I can remember, is what I meant to say. My father was always going out. I had constant sitters, and I had, consistently, they were the same ones for a few years at a time, right? So many times I would even end up going over to their house. I'd be dropped off at their house and that kind of thing. Well, this one, who was one of the younger ones, she was, how do you say? It was definitely easier to get away with stuff with her. She had what's the word? A looser eye on keeping an eye on me. And she really entrusted that to the TV. And I love that because they had HBO. And even in 1981, and especially in 1981, I'll say, because in 1981, if all of them were around, I'll be surprised. But the four that were growing, that, you know, HBO's big, believe it or not, big competition back in the day was not actually Showtime for a long time. It was the movie channel. So there was the movie channel, there was HBO, the movie channel, Showtime, and Cinemax. And that's it. That's all that I remember. It wasn't until the 90s that Encore and all these other ones started coming out. Anywho, they had HBO, which meant, you know, I loved going over there because I'd always get to watch adult content. And here I am, you know, 9 years old. You can imagine Caddyshack was an absolute blast. And I had even heard my father talk about this film, but I hadn't seen it. Right. So I got to watch Caddyshack, which had not only debauchery, but it had, you know, in the sense of sexual debauchery, but it also had drugs. So you had marijuana and you had sex in Caddyshack. And then Halloween, which starts off with sex and you know, stuff that a kid, you know, quite frankly, lives to see at 9 years old. And then, of course, it gets pretty graphic pretty quick. I will say that for Halloween. So here I am, 9, and the sitter, funny enough, you know, the sitter was not, I don't know if she just caught maybe a glimpse or if she knew that maybe it wasn't that hardcore, but she just let me sit there and watch Caddyshack the whole time. And I swear to this day, it feels like I was high when it was happening. Of course, that would make sense because skip forward, I'll go ahead and say this, my entire career as a drug dealer, all of my friends and all the dealers that I worked with, everybody that worked with me, they all knew that my favorite film was Caddyshack. And I loved to just sit around and get high to Caddyshack. I would play it like over and over, kind of like the way I do Bob's Burgers and other series now that I'll play over and over. Like right now, rewatching Parks and Rec, you know, just to give that a shout out. By the way, does anybody else see this? I'm just going to put that up there. I don't want to say it because I don't want to get age restricted, but I mean, that's the bowl actually sits like this, right? That's the way you're supposed to hit it, right? But I always make my mother and my wife hit it like that because I think it's funnier. Right here, I'll give you a preview, give you an idea. I got to get it going though. You can't just, it's really hard to light it like that. Oh. It cracks me up. I think there was truly a deviant mind at work when they made this bowl, right? That's not a mistake. That's all I have to say. That's not a mistake. Like, it's so blatant. Either that or this guy had a real thing for Freud, maybe. It's like, I really love this psychiatrist. Let me make a bowl in lieu of that guy. So anyway, back to 81. I sat there and watched the whole thing. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I love Caddyshack. Like I said, it became one of my favorites, one of my go-tos when I was in my 20s. And really, it isn't a surprise considering it was one of the first. It wasn't the first by any stretch, but it was one of the early, let's put it that way, rated R movies that I saw that was, you know, fairly explicit. If you think about Caddyshack in its day, it was, you know, one of your more in your face dick and fart jokes, right? A lot of it. I mean, it really, if it wasn't for films like that, how could you have movies like Hangover, quite frankly? Regardless, I watched it and I just kept sitting there. So the next movie that came on just literally like back to back, and it was one of those back in the day, they did a lot more of this. I don't think HBO does it anymore, but because it doesn't even exist like this anymore. But one movie ended, and all they did was play an HBO thing, and the next movie began, and that was Halloween. And I'm sitting there watching it, and I didn't know Halloween at the time, right? So I was kind of enjoying it because if anybody remembers how Halloween starts, now what was funny is I was sitting there thinking as my sitter, because her boyfriend was over there at the time, and that's no BS. So as this is happening, I'm like, I wonder if she's upstairs doing the same thing that the sitter is doing, which in the movie, I'm not taking anything away from you folks. This is Michael's sister is the babysitter in the film, right? And she's fooling around, and obviously there's what's the word? A skin scene, right? And I do mean sexually speaking. And then it gets really graphic really quick because Mikey just, I can't even remember much of it because I haven't watched it many times. I think I watched it once more after that. And right after that started, like I literally was like, oh my God, what the fuck? And that's when the sitter walked in. And of course, I didn't say what the fuck. Just mind you, I was 9 years old. I was like, what the hell? Regardless, I was taken, and the sitter walked in just as that was happening. I was like, oh, you don't need to be watching this. And I was like, okay. So you're not cool with Caddyshack, but the blood and gore was too much for 9-year-old eyes. I get it. Which I guess, technically speaking, I can understand the, what's the word? The line there, right? One is graphic violence, and one isn't even necessarily graphic drug use or graphic sexual content. It's just older adult content, really. I mean, like, the one thing I will say is I was impressed because I got most of the jokes with Caddyshack the first time I saw it. And they are adult jokes. Oh, here, see this? That's an adult joke. That's one thing that sucks about it. It does not, look at that. That is made so, well, there you go. Oh, and the bowl came out. I didn't break it, but the bowl. But you get my point. Like, it's not made, what's the word I'm looking for? It wasn't made to sit even the way that they have it. I salvaged that bowl, by the way, amazingly so. Although I do have a small mess to clean up after the show, but that's okay. So, anyway, what's really funny is this is a time when I was going to, so I was trying to get the grade right. I would have been in like the third or fourth grade, right? And I know that was the case because I was going to a school called Sloan's, which was a private school that my father could barely afford to send me to, but he did. Why to this day I still don't understand, because I think I've told the story about how I got kicked out of there, but I'll give you a recap of that really quickly, only since we're talking about Sloan's. But anyway, I remember going to school the next day, or technically I think it was like a few days later, because I think this was on a Friday night that happened. So it was Monday. So I'm now, a couple days removed, and all I could remember to tell them is that I got to see multiple women's breasts. That was the big to do, is that there were skin scenes, breasts, if you will, which to a kid, I mean, that was the only thing I could remember. I couldn't remember. I'm trying to remember. There was one. Oh, that's right. The one joke that I could remember is when the dude hits the ball and it goes right into Ted Knight's testicles. That I could remember the dude's name. Trust me, I didn't know his name, and I didn't say testicles because I was at school when I was a kid. But that was all I could remember the next day. I couldn't remember shit else of Caddyshack. And Halloween, all I remember was like, yeah, man, that movie freaked me out. Although I did tell him I did get to see titties before I was freaked out, though. So that part was good. And of course, all that these kids could say. Because what's funny is, I mean, to give you an idea of some of the other movies that were being discussed at the school around the same time was like King of New York, right? Which, not King of New York, excuse me, Escape from New York. Sorry, Escape from New York. King of New York came out in the 90s. Escape from New York, I'm talking about with Kurt Russell. And that was a badass film. And I hadn't had the privilege to see that. So I felt very, privileged to see some of these. My father didn't believe in HBO, just side note, and never got it until I think he was probably in his 60s. First thing I did when I got TV was get HBO. I got all of them, actually. Like every single time I'd be like, I want all the movies, please. I was one of the earliest people, I believe, that was like, hey, can I get just the movie packages and fuck all the other TV? That's all I want. So, but anywho, I thought I was top shit. I thought I was badass. I told you I would say it real quick, so I won't make it long. Side note was, and if I haven't told the story and you want to hear it, then send me a note and say, hey man, tell the story. But I was kicked out of that school for killing a frog. I killed a teacher's son's frog in an attempt to only have some fun, and basically just kept stabbing it in the head with the, how when you have a mayonnaise jar and you put the holes through with a hammer and a screwdriver, right? And you have those sharp pieces of metal. And I was doing the frog like this time. Look at his head. I didn't know that I was inflicting, massive shards to the brain. I wasn't thinking about that. When the frog stopped moving, it dawned on me that it probably had not been a good idea, but it was too late. So what was funny is there was, at the time, I kid you not, maybe 2 weeks and a day left in school. So even though I was officially, I got kicked out for that, but due to the fact that it was a private school and my father went in and bitched out, I still passed that year. I didn't get to go back to the school, mind you. I was done with Sloan's. That was the final time that I was in there. But I got passing grades with flying colors and was able to go back to public school and to the next school year. So, as they say la vie. Anywho, I'm not going to keep you long. I'm going to be on again tomorrow night and then again Saturday. Tentatively, and I'll let you know as more of this develops, tentatively, I have guests planned for Monday and Friday. So hopefully that will come to volition. And again, I will keep you posted with more details as they become known to me. Once I know for sure. I will say Friday is pretty much for sure. I just want to get the stuff up, but that's going to be Joe Dirt and I are going to have a conversation. And I know y'all know Joe Dirt. He's the one that goes lizard hunting. So we're not going to be lizard hunting in this episode. We're going to be actually keeping it real and having a real heart to heart, if you will. So can't wait to do that. That is Friday. Monday, I'm not for sure. So I'll just wait and keep that one tucked under my belt until I find out for sure that he's going to be here, but it'll be somebody that's already been on the show. So with that, I do not have a whole lot to say tonight. I was just going to tell a little story in and out, as they say. Please know that all of y'all, and when I say this, it's funny because Joe and I were talking today, and I'll go ahead and repeat some of what we said, and he gets it. His father was a bit of a preacher, so, and you'll hear more about that, but I'll let Joe tell you. I was telling Joe how, sometimes doing what I do and saying the things I say and being how I am now, particularly in this moment that I'm living, it's not always that easy, right? And what I mean by that is you say the things, it's in the simplest of terms, it's always easier to talk the talk than it is to walk the walk. That doesn't mean that I don't. I'm just saying, even for somebody who continues to say it and be positive and all those things, it's kind of like the way I wrote the other day. being a positive person doesn't mean you're always going to be in a good mood, doesn't mean you're always going to be happy. What it means is in those times when you're not, you remember that and you get through. But even in those times, and even if you're the kind that most of the time remembers and you get through it relatively quickly even, right? You're still going to have days where it's just like, what the fuck is it all for? And it's funny. That's when you have to listen to your own teachings and experience and the things that you're saying to other people. You have to turn them right back around and listen to them yourself. So I say all that because when I say this next part, I'm not just talking to all of y'all, and truly talking to myself as well. And that is, you are incredible, special people, each and every one of you. You have a reason. You have a part of this magnificent life. You have a wonderful life. Whether you see it or not, you do, because you're living. And that in itself makes it wonderful. I promise. And you have purpose, whether you realize that purpose right now or whether you will gain that purpose later. And just know this, many times that purpose will change over time, right? What was your purpose at 20 years old may very well not be your purpose at 50. So, and that's okay. Things change. I love each and every one of you. Thanks for tuning in. I will be back tomorrow with some laughs, as they say, rather than anything else. I think you'll have a really good time. A lot of these excerpts are quite funny. So have a wonderful evening. Have a blessed evening. Love you. Peace.
You can't have my phone number unless we running up the digits. Let me meditate, I just need a couple minutes. Tryna low bump me, my cojones to the big ass. Bitch, I get high. I ain't looking at the clock.